Namaste and greetings. I, Yashika, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. We are gathered here for the 7th day of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Cohort 2, Awareness of Policies and Governance. An online National Spring School program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course. This training program is organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. The chair of this program is Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, visiting distinguished professor at IMPRI, New Delhi. This program has an excellent panel of experts who will be sharing their expertise for the duration of this program. The distinguished expert panel includes Advocate Dr. Flavia Agnes G, Advocate Dr. Albertina G, Dr. Wahida Nenar G, Professor Bijay Lakshmi Nanda Ji, Professor Veena Vaswani Ji, Miss Anju Dubey Pandey Ji, Dr. Padma Diosthali Ji, Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam Ji, Maya Avasthi Ji, Advocate Celine Thomas Ji, Professor Soumya Uma Ji, Dr. Kirthi Ji, Advocate Audrey the Mello Ji, Miss Nandini Sarkar Ji, and Mr. Harish Sadni Ji. The panel of conveners comprises of Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji, Professor Gumdi Devi ji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. Continuing with our commitment to fostering awareness and actionable insights, I extend a warm welcome to all participants engaging in this crucial discourse on ending gender-based violence. I express gratitude for your keen interest and dedication in investing time, energy, and effort towards comprehending the intricate landscape of policies and governance surrounding this pervasive issue. Your participation plays a pivotal role in uniting practitioners and enthusiasts alike, creating a collaborative space for impactful policy research and advocacy. Thank you for your invaluable contributions to this transformative course. We have also shared the course outline and reading resources in your email for your kind person. Before we start today's session, I would like to remind the housekeeping announcements once again. Please join the meeting on time. There will be question and answer session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise. Refrain from making general comments in the question to save time. Now, without any further ado, let us start our program. It is my honor and privilege to invite the chair of our program, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, to start the program with her opening chair remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Yashika. Welcome all. Today's resource person, Advocate Audrey de Mello, Advocate Shalu Nigam, and Ms. Nandini Sarkar for the 7th day of Online National Spring School Program. First of all, I would like to thank IMPRI team, Dr. Arjun Kumar, Dr. Simi Mehta, Ms. Vaishali Singh, Ms. Priyanka Negi, Ms. Satyam Tripathi, and Ms. Vidita, and today's moderator, Ms. Yashika. All these previous 6 sessions focused on building the national level campaign and how the issue of gender-based violence became center stage after efforts of collective endeavor of the women's movement. And we started with the inaugural address by Advocate Flavia Agnes. We also discussed the question of legal activism and judicial activism, also the question of medical legal issues involved in gender-based violence, and how to create the solidarity amongst different stakeholders, and also working and importance of networking were highlighted. Today's overarching theme is about the collaborative approach to ending gender-based violence. And we all know that fundamental duties outlined in the Constitution of India hold significant relevance for ending gender-based violence, reflecting the collective societal responsibility towards ensuring safety, dignity, and rights of women. While fundamental duties encompass broader principles that are inherently linked to addressing mind-boggling issues of varied form and intensity of gender-based violence in the current context. Firstly, the duty to abide by Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions entails upholding the fundamental principles of equality, justice, human dignity enshrined in the Constitution and also in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We had a session on CEDAW by Dr. Vaida Nainar, and she also shared the global experiences of how CEDAW has impacted responses of the state and non-state actors with regards to gender-based violence. Now, recognizing and respecting women's rights as equal citizens and advocating for their protection from all forms of violence and discrimination is a very important challenge that we are facing in the 21st century. The duty to promote harmony and spirit of social solidarity among all people of India, transcending religious, linguistics, and regional diversities, underscores the importance of fostering a society free from gender-based discrimination and gender-based violence. They are two sides of the same coin. It emphasizes the need for collective efforts to challenge harmful social norms and practices, gender stereotypes that perpetuate and valorize violence against gender-based violence. Furthermore, the duty to protect and improve natural environment can be interpreted in the context of creating safe and conducive environments for women, for sexual minorities, for children, for elderly, and this includes advocating for safer private and public spaces, addressing structures and systems that contribute to their vulnerability to violence, and ensuring access to resources and support services for the survivors of violence. The duty to develop scientific temper, humanism, spirit of inquiry, and reform encourages critical thinking and introspection regarding societal attitude and practices that enable and perpetuate violence, and it calls for direct intervention, punishment to perpetrators of violence, promotion of gender-sensitive education and awareness programs to challenge patriarchal norms, and zero tolerance to gender-based violence, and promote gender equality and respect for dignity of all human beings who face varied forms of intersectional vulnerability. So human dignity, bodily integrity, and the human rights are very important. Today's resource persons have given and dedicated their life for this kind of endeavor for over 2 to 3 decades. And we are really honored to have Advocate Audrey DeMello, Ms. Advocate Shalu Nigam, and Ms. Nandini Sarkar to enlighten us on this topic of collaborative approaches in ending gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your guidance as we embark on the 7th day. On that note, we are now progressing towards our initial session of the day on building partnerships, collaborative approaches for a coordinated response to gender-based violence. I am delighted to invite Advocate Audrey DeMello ji, Director, Majlis Legal Center, Mumbai, visiting Senior Fellow IMPRI, to take the floor. If you could take from here, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, the entire team of IMPRI, and especially Vibhuti ma'am. We were just talking before the session started how IMPRI is now becoming all about gender, and I think that's beautiful because that's a quality that Vibhuti ma'am has. Wherever she goes, she ensures that gender is an issue that is discussed on the table. So thank you for always doing that over so many decades. I was thinking about the topic that you gave me, and it was really daunting because before me, you all have had 7 days of very, very intense speakers. All of them my seniors, all of them who have done so much work on ending gender-based violence. So I thought for this, I will focus on exactly the topic that was given to me, which was to understand how building partnerships and collaborative approaches can actually address this issue. And I thought I'll take from my own experience to share with you when collaborations have worked, when they haven't worked, and how you can use it in your own work. So I work with an organization called Majlis, and we are very fortunate to have been an organization that has evolved from the early women's movement. So our founders were part of the women's movement, and we started the Majlis Legal Center way back in 1991. Basically, as an outcome of the women's movement, to serve all the efforts of the women's movement in ensuring that we had got so many laws and now we had to make them work. So, Majlis as an organization has always worked in a collaborative way with the women's movement, because there were various organizations in the early 90s where the whole NGO culture started. Otherwise, we were an autonomous movement. We were all working together. We were doing morchas together. We were campaigning for new laws. But then slowly and surely, organizations felt the need that now we need to consolidate. After we have done the morchas, after we have done the campaigning, after we have got the law, now you need to do some very ground-based work of ensuring we are using the law. So that's how Majlis and many other organizations like Akshara, Sri Mukti Sangatna, many NGOs many women's movement activists decided to set up NGOs. So Majlis, much like the others, started with an idea that we wanted to ensure access to justice, right? It is a very difficult idea, because in a way, access to justice is so difficult for the common man anyway across, gender. But when it comes to women, and when it comes to women wanting to access justice, it becomes very complicated, because at one level, the family is involved, another level, patriarchal biases are involved of what women should do. And then there is the legal system, which is anyway extremely daunting, which has to ensure the rights are given to women. So we were kind of juxtaposing three very big systems and ensuring that women could walk that journey to at least reach the big structures that were supposed to give her justice. And when we started, what we realized is that what was different about Majlis is that while many NGOs work in a very difficult space like the community, which is changing community mindset, it is a different grammar when it comes to making the system accountable. Because here you have to use the letter of the law and work with the stakeholders who don't believe that women should get justice or even access their rights, and convince them that now you have to read the letter of the law and ensure that this woman's, gets her access and at least be able to file her case. So the grammar was very different. We had to be very engaged with the knowledge of the law, the procedural aspects of the criminal procedure, and then use our feminist understanding and our feminist support to push them to act. And we have done that for 30 years. And what I thought is I'll give you some examples of how this can actually work and where probably it didn't work, right? So, some of the early memories that come to me, we were all very young, but I remember a morcha that Flavia had outside the family court, right? Family courts had just set up. It was a very new idea. It was an initiative of the women's movement that we should have family courts, and we cannot go to the regular courts if we want to ensure women get access, because they get lost in the big district courts. So family courts were set up in 1984, and the Mumbai's family courts gets set up in, and Flavia is one of the first women lawyers to register. Her court number is number 3. So we start practicing there. And ideally, because the court had shifted from town, I'm talking about Mumbai context, from the center hub to a small suburb, no lawyers wanted to come there. So very few lawyers were practicing, because anyway, the Family Courts Act says that no lawyers should practice. Women should go on their own. Now, what happened is, we started in 1991. And there was a case in the court. It was not our case, but the judge threw the papers on the women's face, saying that, what is this nonsense you have brought, and where is your lawyer? And he was very, very abusive towards her. So what Flavia does is, all her activist spirit, I mean, no lawyer would have thought of this, right? But because she's come from the women's movement, she activated all the NGOs who were part of the women's movement to say this has happened in court. Usually the women's movement NGOs will not know what is happening in court, but because we had this linkage, now we knew this. So there was a big morcha outside the family court, and hundreds of women are walking, saying we oppose to this judge. And that shook the entire judicial system. They had never seen something like this, because for them it's such a closed space that they can do whatever they want in their courts, but nobody will make a big hue and cry. But we could juxtapose both these movements, the feminist movement, a feminist understanding, and make this judge accountable. So it's a beautiful picture. I am going to share it with Vibhuti at the end of this session, but it just shows how we can bring a very non-legal forum into the legal space and make them accountable. That was one example. And today also it's relevant. Today also, when you see something going wrong, it doesn't stop you from taking such actions. For example, even today, when we see something going wrong in court, we write very, very clearly about what exactly happened, and we write to the Chief Justice, informing them that in courtroom number 18 of the Sessions Court, this judge spoke to a POXO victim in this manner. We give the words of what was spoken, or the fact that defense was allowed to ask certain questions. So in that way, you can become a bridge between the highest authority and the lowest court and ensure accountability. So that is one of the practices that Majlis has continued through the support of the women's organizations to ensure those linkages happen, right? Another example that I think is very meaningful to share in this context, especially with so much of communal divide, so much of hatred towards certain communities, and the way the Muslim women's rights campaign kind of, went haywire with the criminalization of the triple talaq. I want to give you another example, which I feel worked really well, and that is of the Christian women's rights. Up till 2005, Christian women had a right to divorce, but the right to divorce was that you will have to prove adultery and cruelty. Now, the problem is that all cruel men are not adulterous, which means if your husband is only beating you, you can't get a divorce. He has to be adulterous and cruel. Now, the other point is that as a lawyer, I can explain to you that proving adultery is next to impossible. Because even if a person is gone out together, they've booked a hotel together, you cannot say that just because they've gone together, they are adulterous. So proving adultery was almost impossible. So Christian women were hardly accessing the right to divorce. So we started a campaign to say that we want the and word to be changed to or. It should be cruelty or adultery. It should not be both, right? But because times were more beneficial at that time, there was not so communal divide at that time, there was not so much hatred at that time vis-a-vis certain communities, we were able to work at a multi-pronged effort. The women's movement campaigned for it. There were lots of meetings, lots of conferences held on this issue. Simultaneously, we worked with the clergy. We worked with the Archdiocese board, we worked with the Archbishop to say that this is not right. This is not fair, because there are so many cruel marriages where women want divorce, and we need to give them this right. We gave them examples from other countries and used the clergy, made them come on our side. We used, media, and how media can write about this issue, because it's very difficult to understand for a lay person. And if you ask for a change in law, then the community becomes very closed. They say, don't touch our community, don't interfere with our laws. So if you have the clergy itself say, yes, we want to do it, then it becomes like there's no animosity. And with that entire campaign of the women's groups, of the media, of the clergy, we managed to change this law in Parliament. And 2005, Christian women got a right that you can get a divorce based only on cruelty. And that liberated them so much because they didn't feel they were going against their community. They felt accepted. And now, if you see the number of Christian women who come forward and file cases of divorce on the basis of cruelty is phenomenal compared to what it was prior to 2005. So that, I think, was a very wonderfully strategized campaign of Majlis, of the women's movement, to bring this change in the law and get it passed by Parliament without any community feeling hurt. That was a really beautiful example of a collaborative, a very strategic, bringing everyone together kind of effort of the women's movement to end gender-based violence. Another very example which is close to my heart and which I started after I joined Majlis was something on the Domestic Violence Act. So as you all know, you would have studied through your sessions that in 2005, we got a law called the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act. And it's a path-breaking law in that way that it brings all the stakeholders together. It's the only law where it says, even if a woman doesn't want to go to court, she can get reliefs. She can get shelter, she can get medical, she can get, help in getting a job. So there are many stakeholders involved. Usually in a law, what will happen? It's court and victim. That's the two stakeholders. And police to register the complaint if it's a criminal case. But this law has said that police is a stakeholder, medical is a stakeholder, shelter homes are a stakeholder, NGOs are stakeholders, many stakeholders. Now, 2005, the law came. Around 2010, 5 years later, we go to the department and we say, where are the protection officers? Where are all the stakeholders? In Maharashtra, nothing had happened. Absolutely nothing had happened. And, we would say we want to train the protection officers and they would laugh at us. They would say, there are 3,000 protection officers. And we would say, who are these people? And they would say, they are the tehsildars. How can the tehsildars do protection officer work? Where is the time? I mean, considering their whole mandate. So we said this won't work. So we decided again to do a very, very strategic intervention. We did a collaboration with the Women and Child Department, right? And we kind of came from a place where first we started telling them, where is this? Where is this? Where is this? Why is this? Asking for accountability. Once they realized that nothing was in place, medical didn't know their role, police didn't know their role, everyone was confused. Then they invited us and said, why don't you come and we'll do a collaboration where we will at least set this thing in process. So we did that. And it took 3 years of my life. And I'm not joking. I did nothing night and day because to understand the bureaucracy, to understand how medical public health works, how people go into a public health system, and how will we bring in the DV Act there and say that this is your role under DV Act? How would a case get registered where they will refer it to the... It required a indefinite kind of understanding and learning on the ground how to make departments talk to each other, because everyone works in a stylus. And we kind of managed at the end of it to bring out what we call a standard operating procedure. And the beauty of that standard operating procedure is that it had a letter from the Chief Justice of India, of Bombay High Court. It had a letter from the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It had a letter from the WCD department. It had a letter from the Home Department. Everyone telling their stakeholders what you need to do. And it had best practices. I think that booklet is like a guide. Even today, stakeholders bring it out and say, okay, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. Because we managed to get all the stakeholders to speak to each other, but with the lens of gender, with the understanding of domestic violence. And that, culminated into each person addressing their issue. Like medical was saying, telling doctors, listen, DV Act tells us that we have to inform women about her rights. We have to tell her about the reliefs that she can get under DV Act. We have to refer her to the protection officer. And such circulars went out to every hospital. And I think in a way that changed because suddenly there was an awareness, there was understanding about DV Act. But we didn't stop there because we still had the tehsildars as the protection officers. So imagine you have moved this entire system, but the protection officer is still not somebody who can do anything. So what we did was, because WCD said no budget, no budget, no budget, we then filed a PIL in High Court. And we said, if this is the role of the protection officer, please tell us how this officer is going to be able to do it. So, you know, the flexibility to say, I will work with you, but when you don't do as per what is required, I will also oppose you. And that for me is very important in the work that we do. Because if you get sold to the government, if you start delivering on their schemes and if you start taking money from them and you start delivering the services, then you get bounded by the money and you get bound by the reporting and you're too scared to speak up against them. So if you are interested in collaborative effort, you definitely have to have a lot of knowledge to be able to ask for accountability, but simultaneously you should be able to work with them and you should be able to oppose them when you feel like finally the whole purpose of ending gender-based violence is moving forward. It's not an either or. You cannot say, I will be anti-state, I will not work with state, I will have nothing to do with them. You'll have to be nimble enough to be able to do this. And when this doesn't work, to be also able to oppose them, right? I will definitely like to share with you one of the things that for me was a very disturbing, defining moment, which I still feel very strongly about. It did not work out the way I had imagined it to me. It is about the counseling that is offered by police, by judiciary, by the state in settling domestic violence matters. I had a very strong objection to it because I felt that if you are registered as a stakeholder under DV Act, you cannot do samjhauta. And the DV Act also is very clear that if you want any reliefs, including a relief of settlement, you go through a court-ordered counseling. But when we opposed it, the women's movement did not agree with that. They felt that counseling was the best thing that we are offering women now because going to court is extremely difficult. And we should allow women the option of a settlement, and we should be allowed to do counseling, and police should also be allowed to do counseling, and everyone should be allowed to do counseling because that is what women want. And for me, that was a big setback because what happens in the name of counseling is very, very disheartening. I get to see it at close quarters of how women are forced to go back to very abusive marriages. They are insulted. There is no protection given to them. We don't know if they go back and they are killed or they are murdered or they die. But this whole idea of saving the family has ensured that we have not looked at women as true citizens of getting their rights. We still look at them as second-class citizens who have to settle and take the lesser, choice because there is no other option. So these are some of the examples I thought I would really like to share with you all about how, you cannot work in isolation. And it's really sad that NGOization has ensured that all of us are working in silos, right? I have to get my funding, so I have to show my work, so I have to then ensure my targets, and we get so caught up with that rigmarole that we forget why we are here. And that's why being connected to a community, that's why being committed to an outreach is so important to keep us all grounded. And we were very lucky that we, started from the women's movement. So we always have that support. But for newer organizations, for newer initiatives, I would advise you that Be connected to a network. There are so many networks that are available who are working on different issues. Be connected so that you can draw from their strength, you can draw from their support, and work in a way that you're always remembering that why am I doing this? What is my ulterior goal? It cannot become about running an organization. It has to be about the women that we work for, the women LGBTQ plus and children that we are constantly working for. Currently in Bombay, if any of you are in Bombay, we have a group called the We Action Group. We decided that, women's movement groups are one type, but there are organizations working on old age. They are working on other queer rights. They're working on environment. They're working on, different aspects of, of in this sector. And so We Action Group is a community of all kinds of NGOs or individuals who are want to come together and bond on certain issues. So if any of you are in Mumbai and want to be part of it, we'd be really happy to have you as part of this lovely network. I'll stop here. If you have any questions or suggestions, happy to take them.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for your invaluable insights during the session and for providing essential context and perspectives. I would now like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for her remarks on the session.
Yeah. Thank you, Advocate Audrey de Mello, for making such a vivid and both heart-touching as well as a very erudite presentation about the multifaceted challenges that organizations like Majlis, which is working both with the court and with the communities facing. You also mentioned the challenges of pressure that is from the state and non-state actors and funders. So what is your advice and recommendation to these new organizations working with the community and taking up the issue of domestic violence and its implementation? What kind of safeguards they need to have, for seeing the long-term survivor of the organization and the team, And question of burnout also, how does, in your organization, how do you deal with the burnout among the activists?
So very, very important question about, this is a big concern I have for community-based organizations because they're so exposed. They work very close in the community. They have to address all issues of the community. Once you work in the community, you cannot say कि ये health issue मैं नहीं देखूंगी, मैं सिर्फ gender issue देखूंगी, or I will not do education because the woman is coming with all the problems. You will have to address it. Now, the second part and what we have seen, Vibhuti ji, in POXO cases, the sexual violence is happening in the home. The girl is part of the community program. She's coming there for studying or for some course. She shares that I'm facing sexual violence in my home. The community-based organization becomes very stuck because if they take a step, they may get thrown out. You must be knowing of cases of Vacha, where they are working in the community, they are addressing education, such important work. But when such a case comes, if they take a stand, the community will come together and say, you are spoiling our name, you are encouraging this thing, and you leave the community. So we will have to have a multi-pronged approach. What we do for community-based organizations, Vibhuti ji, is we become the alternate because we are not community. So they can say, Majlis aaye, unhone case kiya, humne to kuch nahi kiya. And they can transfer the burden to us. And we become the lawyers to say, this is mandatory reporting, humko to karna hi hai, whatever. And so we can isolate each other because they then say that, ye NGO hai, ye SSA karte hai, they have said we have to do, what can we do? And so they can protect themselves in that manner. For organizations who may not have a majlis, they will have to use agencies like the Child Welfare Committee. They will have to use agencies like the protection officer. So they should not jump into the case. Because what I find is sometimes community-based organizations expose themselves too much. And sometimes I'm doing a case currently, ma'am. It is a community-based organization who provides shelter. They provide shelter. This girl has ran away and come for shelter to them. Now, what the family has done is they have gone to the political parties, they have gone to Maharashtra State Women's Commission, they have gone to DWCD, they have gone to Home Minister, they have complained about the NGO, saying that they are trying to convert my child into something. So how the NGO response becomes very important. So now Majlis is stepping in and we are becoming the face. We are her lawyer. We are representing her. She is an adult. She has left home. What is the problem? So separating that don't jump all in and put yourself into a vulnerable situation is my first advice. Study the law. I think all of us are responsible for studying the law if we want to engage with the law. Have a child protection policy and a posh policy in your organization, please. If you need any help, Majlis will help you for any help that you need in drafting the policy and implementing it. Because if you don't have a child protection policy, if you don't have a posh policy and anything happens and they will put something on your employees, you will be in a lot of trouble. So please have these policies, train your employees, what is possible, what you should not do. And the last thing I think is burnout is very real. We have to all protect ourselves from burnout. I know my own team, they struggle every day fighting in the court, fighting in the police station. As an organization, we do a lot of activities to ensure that we are there for each other. No one goes alone for a home visit. We always have a buddy system. We all have once a week, we all meet together, we eat a lot, we laugh a lot, and just constantly create spaces where everyone can share what they are going through, however small it is. Have an open door policy. Thank you.
Especially when NGOs are becoming corporatized and there is tremendous atomization within the new organizations where in the name of privacy, nobody interacts with each other and each one is in silo, and there the burnout is very high. So I think your thing which you have gathered from the collective wisdom of the women's movement, that solidarity, interaction, informality, team spirit are extremely important to deal with burnout and also to unwind, with whatever internalized violence that you have had, constantly watching and experiencing. It's very, very important advice that you have, very important. And I think that's why so many organizations started, fizzled out in 5 to 6 years because of massive burnout. But Majlis has still persisted for past 3 decades. Yeah, very important lesson. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The floor is now open to questions from the audience. You can raise your hand on Zoom or type in your question in the Q&A box.
You all have got such a diverse group. I was reading the participant names. I was
Names.
really happy, from students to college professors to NGOs. Everyone is there in this group, and that's really lovely to see people.
Yeah. And I think all of them have encountered gender-based violence, whether you are in corporate or in university or this, because the students have problems, and then you have to, authorities tell you to just mind your business of teaching, but you can't do that, because the moment you teach women's studies, or we had a foundation course called Women in Changing India, in the class they don't speak, but after the class people contact you and tell you about horror stories in their matrimonial life or in their parental home, or the forced marriage with the experience, or child sexual abuse, or the street harassment. And then you can't be maintain distance, that I am just a teacher, I will not support you. So whatever power or social capital you have, you use to see to it that the person who approaches you is supported, and you keep in touch with the person till the problem is solved and that person feels safe and secure. So wherever you are, in your neighborhood or in your workplace, you face this problem. It's so pervasive. Gender-based violence is so pervasive.
Dr. Ghazala Boje is here. She has been a very close partner of Majlis.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of programs in her college, way in Bhiwandi.
Yeah.
But always a joy when we used to go there.
Yeah. Ishmeet, Professor Ishmeet, you can unmute.
Yeah,
Please
yeah,
introduce
thank-
yourself and your work also.
yeah. My name is Ishmeet. I work with Center for English Studies at Central University of Gujarat. So I've basically been working on 1984 anti-Sikh violence, and I'm very interested in looking at, the women's stories around 1984 anti-Sikh violence, the widows, who are there in the Tilak Vihar colony per se. So, I mean, the challenge that we all face is like, what is that point in time where we should approach the, courts or the police? So sometimes, students or even we face concerns which are which are violence based, right? Which are, but we feel that, okay, it can be tackled at our own family level or personal level, and let's not like make an issue out of it. So many a times, we feel that we shouldn't make an issue out of it, and then later on we realize that it should have been tackled right in the beginning so that it shouldn't have become so big a thing. Sometimes it even dies down. Sometimes I mean, if we don't do anything, a slight message goes, and then it does die down. But I mean, I think that's one of the biggest dilemmas that many of us face, that we really don't know what is the point of time when we should actually take it forward, and you know and I think women have a lot of endurance, right? We keep enduring things, even right at the and another thing which I always feel is that many a times we don't even this register that, okay, it is happening to us. We take it as a very very general kind of a thing, so we don't know the starting point of how violence begins. So in Ahmedabad, there is Ruzan Khambata. So 20 I don't remember the date exactly, but when the Nirbhaya case happened, after that, she started a women group here where one could, she gave a phone number where one can dial in case of any kind of violence, gender violence one faces. So she does a lot of workshops, and there she teaches people that what is that starting point, a boss telling an employee that, can you order a cup of coffee for me, and she very gently does so, and he realizes, okay, she is vulnerable, and that's the beginning point of it. And so I feel that even like when I attended her workshop, I thought that, I mean, these are things which we keep doing. Our professor might tell us, okay, why don't you order tea? And we very happily do that, not realizing that we are being judged, and that might be used in many different ways, later on. We become an easy access for people. So, even if we are empowered or we feel ourselves to be very strong and all, we really do not realize many of these ways. So basically, there's no question, but these are like, kind of some of these, what should I say, confusions or dilemmas, where I feel there's a need of a lot of awareness per se, where we can initiate some of these talks. But the sad part is that a lot of these talks are not happening. The institutions or the spaces are not addressing, these concerns. So maybe courts and yes, the lawyers, that's somewhere people finally reach, and they reach when the things are already like in a very, very difficult shape, when there is
Absolutely.
no other way, But, and I feel, of lately, last 10 years, though, this whole discussion has gone down like anything. And any mention of women talk is okay, the ICC committee will do it, you don't have to do it. So why do you in your department have to do it? You teach literature, so why are you, kind of engaging with these things at a university level? So you are restricted only to your center level, you know.
No, but
So-
I think, I was always wondering about this. And a lot of people say that when women come to them, they're not ready to do anything, take any action against it. But somehow when people come to Majlis, they are ready to take action. And I always wonder what is that difference, right? One, it could be that they know you're a lawyer, so the only ones who want to file come to you. But I've seen even when there are women in the NGO community and they don't know, like they're not sure, POXO cases, mother does not want to file and they're not convinced. I think, people get convinced when you are able to show them not what the law is, but what support you are ready to give them. Unless you have 100% backing to say, okay, we'll file, but after that, I am here for this throughout that journey. Who will take that step? Filing is the first step. After that, there is the whole thing. Who's going to support you? Only if women can feel that support, hear that confidence, saying that this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is how it will end, then they can make an informed choice. I don't think we give women that opportunity, or we are able to, because nobody likes abuse. And I want to tell you that as women, we don't want to lose the ability to feed people, to order tea, to laugh, to joke. We don't want to lose that. So, yes, people will tell you, why did you make that first cup of tea? Why not? I'm a woman. I like to feed people. I like to nurture. That's me. But when I feel abused, when I feel threatened, then I should be able to take action. And the problem is there. When I feel abused and I don't have somebody to support me, that's when I feel small. Not because I served the tea and it was, I have encouraged this behavior. I have served tea because I like to serve tea. I love to serve food. I love to eat together. I love to laugh loudly. That's not the problem. The problem is when his actions make me feel abused or make me feel threatened, and then I don't like it, then what is available to me to be able to put a stop to it? And that is where we need to address it and not stop women from doing these things, which is so much us. Why should we give it up? We want to dress up, we want to eat, we want to laugh, and that's fine.
And we don't know where to draw that line, right? I mean, if somebody is asking me to order for a cup of tea, I don't know where to draw the line. Why will I not order? Right? That's my point.
No, and even if you know how to draw, where to draw line, we all of us have faced this, but that person's intention are malified. That is the problem. So the burden should be on the person who misbehaves, not on the, so victim blaming should not be there that you invited it or you provoked it or because of your behavior that it was the interpretation which the accused had was that you wanted intimacy. So
And
that
I think one another problem is lack of trust. We do not have trust in the system. So we feel पुलिस के चक्कर में कौन पड़ेगा? Lawyers को कौन फीस देगा? कितना लंबा चलेगा? So that is another thing, like that this lack of trust is a very important thing that deters, people from getting into the formal path that we should take for justice.
But also, like in the WDC, there are two aspects to it. It's not only when the sexual harassment takes place, you can have ICC. ICC is a component of WDC. WDC has a wide range of this thing for empowerment of women. So under empowerment of women, it is not only legal awareness, but also hand-holding of a person who feels this. So we have seen that there are some, even when I was a member secretary of WDC of Bombay University, that was in 2002, I'm talking of, where Bombay University was the first to come up with the policy on sexual harassment immediately after the Vishaka Directive. And there were so many things which were not the harassment, discrimination, or women employees asking, the widow of an employee asking for a loan, and the misbehavior of the finance department that you become my keep, and then I'll pass the loan. All sorts of things I could take. They did not have courage to give a written complaint because they were a temporary worker. They are taken on mercy. But you can use your power and good office to see to it that her problem is solved. No, because once you are in a position of power, you have a chair, and if you have a sympathetic higher authorities like Vice Chancellor. For me, I was lucky. Professor Mungekar was the Vice Chancellor when I was this thing. So I would communicate to him that there are so many things which were beyond the purview of ICC, but under WDC we could take it up, no, and also come up with like the whole question of pornography in the campus, no, where you just enter and that was the time MSCIT was very important for anyone to get increment or permanency of job, and the male employees they ganged up. And they saw to it that women don't complete their course, and that's why they had like installed so many pornographic images and this thing on the computer. So as soon as you go and switch on your computer, what you see is a horrible image, and women stopped going to the computer lab. And then they came. They said then people, the whole theorization that happened was that women are technophobe and they can't pick up technology, and those vacancies will be filled up by men and all. And when I asked, when I probed, they told us that it is because of this particular problem, that pornography, that they were scared of entering the computer lab because men were completely monopolizing the computer lab. I reported this to the Vice Chancellor, and we saw to it that centrally all the pornographic websites, that time we had some 1100 websites, they were banned centrally. So I think using your good office for empowerment of the victims of gender-based violence is also very important. And that various, as the Advocate Audrey told us, that we can collaborate with different agencies, sometimes the higher authority, sometimes the colleagues, sometimes the trade union. Like there was one case where the principal who had harassed the temporary teacher was extremely powerful, and I was continuously getting threatening call that soft pedal, just prolong the discussion, don't come with any conclusion and all. I just advised that person. I said, look, my solidarity is always with you, but the system is against you. Better you go to the women's group. I'm also a member of it. And then finally, when the women's group had a demonstration and all that, and the judge of Sessions Court, Dr. Advocate Katie Baum, she punished the university for dilly-dallying the case. Then her case was and now also that teacher, now she's a permanent teacher, she has completed her PhD and everything. And when I went to that college, all of them were so understanding that I know I was the only person among the officers who stood by her while the whole system was against it, and they had no grounds against me that if I, as a member secretary, I did not set up the inquiry, which authorities were asking me to dilly-dally. So so I think various networks, I think we need to build the bridges with all stakeholders, and wherever we get support, I think we should.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for guiding us through our first session and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in our future IMPRI events as well. With this, we now move on to our legal hands-on session 6 by Advocate Shalu Nigamji, visiting senior fellow at IMPRI and distinguished advocate, author, and researcher in gender and human rights. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Very much. Yeah, thank you so much for your wonderful, sharing of so many things.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, so today we have been discussing about the fundamental duties, the duties of citizens, the duties of the states, and so I'll talk about today something about a very different kind of violence or discrimination, we can call it. And I'll start with this Santal song, and this is being being sung during forest degradation and loss of food and the heightened conflict which happened in one of the districts in Odisha. So it says a long time ago in the true age, there were many creepers in the forest. A breeze brought rain from the sky. It's the right time. We made a long way short. We built roads after clearing the jungle. We built cities and markets. As the forest was gone, the rain stopped. We used to eat a ball of rice. Now we are sharing only a fistful. So even two real brothers do not get along. Daily they fight. So basically, it's all about the food and how it was there earlier, and after this neoliberal policies came in and the privatization, the things got worse. So basically, the scholars have said that food is a human right, and no citizen should be so very rich that he can buy another, and none so poor so that he's compelled to sell himself. Even if we talk about the Indian, former Prime Minister, he said that economic issues are most vital to us, and it is of the highest importance that we should fight our biggest enemies, poverty and unemployment. So basically, if we look at the data, we can see that basically it's the women who are, living on less than $190 per day, and the UN data is available, and it says Sustainable Development Goal says that there should be no poverty, but poverty still persists despite of decades we have been talking about addressing it in different forms. But the recent data shows that 640 million people still are living in extreme poverty. And if we talk about Indian situation, we have, in terms of literacy, in terms of, malnutrition, we can say that, a lot of things we have to do. And if we talk about the pandemic, after the pandemic, the things have become worse, and the global GDP has decreased by 3.5% in 2020. The pandemic has pushed 124 million people into extreme poverty, and nearly 1 in 3 people in the world, they do not have access to food in 2020. So early estimates suggest increase of 45% increase in child mortality because of shortfall in health services and reduction in access to food. Total working hours also fell by 8.8% in 2020. So restricted movement, social isolation, everything has increased the vulnerability. This is the screenshot of World Food Program website, and it says that in India we have 21% of people living on less than $190 per day. That is 1/4 of world's undernourished people who are living in India, who are malnourished. India ranked 111 out of 121 countries in the Global Hunger Index in 2023. And this is how we have proceeded. In 2009, this was 65. We ranked at 65 place, and this goes up gradually. So there's another report in 2024 by Asia Pacific Human Development Report, and it says that persistent wealth divide is driving, kind of deep inequalities, and women are only 23% of the labor force. Before the pandemic, only 30 to 40% of regular salaried adult earners had job contracts or social security, but now this is all gone. And self-employed workers, for them, the situation is more critical, and they constitute nearly 60% of labor force in 2019. Now, this is something, a kind of cartoon from Western countries, but again, this applied to, it shows the kind of inequalities in terms of income and availability of resources, and how the income is being, divided. So companies are getting more share, and the employees are getting less and less, and they are surviving on food stamps in other countries also. So how inequalities are persisting and widening over the decades. The Oxfam report, it says that in India 5% own more than 60% of country's wealth. So there is a report which is titled as Survival of the Richest, and it says that if Indian billionaires are taxed once at 2% of their entire wealth, that would support the requirement of rupees 40,423 crores. And it could, in terms of nutrition of malnourished, that can be fulfilled for 3 years. And, so this combined wealth of India's 100 richest has touched to, $660 billion. And meanwhile, a lot of taxes being imposed on poor people. So in terms of hungry Indians, they have increased to 350 million in 2022 from 190 million in 2018. So hunger is spreading, and 65% of the deaths among children under the age of 5 took place because of hunger in 2022. Oxfam said that India has highest number of poor, that is 228.9 million, and the bottom 50% of population at India level pay 6 times more of indirect taxation as percentage of their income as compared to top 10%. So it says that because the government has failed to tax rich people, and therefore the inequality is rising, and people are, poor people are being burdened with taxes. So what is this giving rise to? This is giving rise to food insecurity. So there's a study conducted by Public Health Foundation of India in 2023, and it says that 10% of Indians have experienced food insecurity, ranging from mild to moderate. And they conducted this study in Sonipat in Haryana and Vizag in Andhra Pradesh. And they says that dietary intake, during 2018 and 2019, that is, that is a lot of, they found the gendered kind of component, because women reported higher food insecurity than men. And the study says that, especially from the rural areas, there is low consumption of nutrient-rich foods such as dairy, fruit, vegetables, and all the kind of vitamin and everything is being lacking. And especially because the kind of culture we are living in, where women tend to prioritize food for their male members and children. So they say that because of that could also be the reason. So during the decades of 90s, there was a lot of food being procured by Food Corporation of India, while the people outside were dying, because of hunger. So PUCL filed a petition, PIL, in the Supreme Court, and it pointed out that there is a corruption in the PDS system, and the food is, distribution of food is irregular and arbitrary. So the court took this as a violation of Article 21, that is right to life, and right to life with human dignity. So that is being violated, and therefore Supreme Court has given several decisions, and this case went on for a very long time. You can just search it on the web, right? PUCL versus Union of India, right to food, and there is a whole range of orders of the courts, and it talks about schemes such as employment assurance scheme, Grameen Yojana, midday meal scheme, integrated child development scheme, and how this should be be helping to cover the food insecurity which is taking place. And the court also created a commission in 2002, and then we have this whole Rozi Roti Abhiyan, the whole campaign, the NGOs, the activists, and a lot of other people came together, and they fought for for such a long time. And the Right to Food campaign was initiated, and the slogan was Bhuke Pet Bhare Godam, starving bellies, full godams. So the National Food Security Act was passed in 2013, and it says that the eldest adult female within the family should be recorded as the head of the household for the purpose of PDS ration cards. And it also talks about expanding midday meal schemes in schools, strengthening the ICDS services, and a whole sort of kind of provisions were made so that the poor shouldn't, that category should be taken care of. To Professor Bakshi, he commented that, it is like, being a tool which is being used by the activist group in a sense of the new politics, that is broadly a constitutional politics which emerged out of this campaign. but there are gaps and challenges within this, because some of the theorists, they say that the language of rights is should be used for making social change. They say that PDS has a long history of implementation starting from the colonial period, but so the bureaucratic problems are there, lately, by linking Aadhaar with a ration card, so many citizens are being denied benefit, and the system is excluding individuals. So the very poorest of the poor are being excluded, and a lot of deaths have been taken place because some people were denied because their Aadhaar card was not matching, or their finger thumbprint was not matching, or because of various other reasons. And also, it has been said that protein-rich diet should be added. If we are giving ration or food to the poor, these kind of legumes, eggs, meat, milk should be added to their diet. But this is being denied due to various reasons. Again, we have state by state, different kind of schemes. So even state wise, the things also differ. So there were special rapporteur on right to food at the global level, and he said that agricultural outputs and to lower the food price, we should pay attention to the wide range of diverse food and micronutrients. So while growing the crops, we should go diverse and sustainable. But what is happening under the privatization is that we are focusing on some of the crops while neglecting the other things. So they say that we should adopt human right framework, to ensure that young children and women should be given priority. So when we talk about welfare state and fundamental rights and direct principles of state policy, so we have to find a solution, within that. Because we have various schemes and policies such as Rural Employment Guarantee Act, right to health, right to education. So there are different rights which are there within Part 3 of the Constitution, as well as Part 4, that is fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. But again, how they are enforced, that is what we have to see. So basically, if we are just, there's it requires a lot of time to go into the details. But if we talk about learnings, so basically, law, morality, and culture, these things intertwined in multiple and complex way. And basically, the accountability of the state, which is an important factor that should, that we should talk about more, because when the state has failed to at the moral level while denying justice and right to life with dignity to its majority of citizens. So basically, when we talk about rights of marginalized section, we have to see that they are constantly and continuously reframed, monitored, and enforced. Because even through the when digital thing is happening, we are using technology to monitor, but again, those things are not being at the ground level. Those things are not working properly. There are many flaws, and we have to really contest. We have to talk about the idea of citizenship and deepening democracy. So, what are the questions? The questions which comes to my mind is that we say that India is a welfare state, but how the decision to allocate resources are being taken by the government. So, when we talk about duties of state vis-a-vis citizens, especially those on margins, what is happening at that level? So why claiming citizenship entitlement is difficult for some people, because even if we talk about access to justice or access to any other basic rights, there are some certain categories of people who are being denied their rights, while for others it is much easier. So, but the state has resources, power, and capabilities to create appropriate conditions, but the state is again oppressing. So as we have seen in the earlier session, that we should be in partnership with the state, and also we have the capacity to oppose the state. So so we have to raise these kind of questions, that why a right to shelter or a right to health is still not declared as a fundamental right under Indian Constitution. Though the courts have expanded the notion of health, the notion of food, under Article 21. But why the elected governments over decades, they have not considered these basic rights as a priorities. We have been debating about freebies, and during this election, a lot of debates is being happening that who is giving freebies to whom. But what about the Human Development Index in terms of poverty, in terms of starvation, and in terms of inequalities? People at the ground, they are there, they are struggling. So we have to decide that which side we are, and how can we talk about welfare state and rights and duties of citizens and the state. So basically, hunger is not an issue of lack of resources, but it is a issue of political failure. And similarly, poverty and inequalities are political issues, and they are related to social and distributive justice. So with this, I will end here, and maybe we can have more discussion. Otherwise, so thank you so much for giving me the space and share my views.
Thank you, ma'am. Your expertise and perspective have added tremendous value to our collective understanding of this crucial issue. I would now like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for her remarks on this session.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shalu Nigam, for taking up this very important concern of the disenfranchised. We currently have a midday meal program, and we also have a program of a distribution of through ration shops. Over and above that, what all do we need? Do we still need community kitchens by the state? Do you think that? See, the question is not, because so many economists have shown that the burden is not very high. It hardly comes to 2% of GDP, even if you have the community kitchen in the areas where it is needed. No, because the NFHS 5 has shown massive increase in malnutrition among women and children. So this targeted PDS, where does it take up? And linking it up to Aadhaar card, what kind of complication it has, and should we have a universal universalization of right to food the way Kerala has?
Yes, I surely think that we should have community kitchens, because right now the thing is that the unemployment level is very high. So even if we talk about, say, people affording the food, even some people there is this capacity which is dwindling because of loss of employment, and loss of avenues to generate income. So so a lot of things are happening. So definitely we need community kitchens, but then also along with that we need we need to talk about right to employment, and right to health, and all of the basic education and other needs. Because what is happening is right now the debates are being just political debates are just limited to a few things, freebies, and other things. But if we talk about in general about Human Development Index, we talk about inequalities, we talk about discrimination, we talk about hunger. So no, those debates should be important, and politics should be focusing on that. But that is not happening. So we're not talking about right to education and right to food, and so that is one thing. And surely universal right to food should be there, because even the Supreme Court had said, even in this PUCL versus Union of India, that there should. And the Food Security Act was basically formulated to ensure that people should be guaranteed right to food. And similarly, the Rural Employment Guarantee Act, now it generally provides 100 days of employment, where activists have demanded for more days of employment. And they say that even this should be applied to urban areas also, because in urban areas and in slum, there's a lot of poverty. So we have to enforce all these kind of laws. So it's basically the whole kind of comprehensive kind of system which we have to ensure, so that everyone should be able to access their basic rights.
Yeah, what have you to say about the Aadhaar linked ration?
Yeah, the Aadhaar linked, lot of problems have been reported by by different journalists and activists and people who are working on ground, because they say that sometimes what is happening is that Aadhaar is in the name of, say, my husband, and if I get divorced or separated, I don't get the separate Aadhaar card. So getting the Aadhaar card is also a problem. And, we have seen a lot of younger children who have died because, the food is not being given.
But
Because
even elderly women have died, no, who have been thrown out by their family members, or the denotified tribes who are constantly moving. They also don't have permanent address. Unless you have a permanent address and all those compliances which the Aadhaar card requires. I think so. It's a massive population. Only thing we don't have data about how many are left out from the Aadhaar linked state supported programs.
yes, so even sometimes your fingerprint is not matching, so the ration card dealer will refuse you to give your ration. So those kind of problems are also there. And if you remember, there was a case in Bihar which was highlighted a lot during COVID. So the small child, she has died because she couldn't get food because the ration could not be given. The dealer has refused to give them ration. So those kind of problems are also there. How should we resolve that? That is a big question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. The floor is now open for the audience to ask questions. Ma'am, we have one question from Ms. Rashi Singh. Do you think one nation, one ration card could solve problems?
No, I really don't think so that one nation, one ration card, what kind of scheme you're talking about. Because again, as we have, just taken this case of, if women are being separated, if women are, being out from the family, or the woman becomes a widow. In that case, what are the solution this scheme is offering? So we have to see, examine this scheme in its whole context, that, how when we talk about single mothers, when we talk about widows, how this scheme is catering to them. Because generally, when you talk about one nation, or one kind of approach, what they are forcing is kind of heterosexual family, where a male is ahead, and then women and children. So even in that case, but if the families form, we have diverse kind of family forms. We have single family, female headed household, single women household. We have different kind of, we have LGBT, kind of household. So in those kind of cases, what kind of how you're going to support them, we have to see that scheme in that context. So
Also, the presumption behind the one nation, one net as a family, as a homogeneous unit, no, that itself is a question.
That is
When you have 11% households are women-headed households, how can you have that kind of understanding of man as head of the household? He is a benevolent and caring, and whole family is looked after. And once you give all the state support to the man, everyone will automatically get it. So the intra-household power relation, discrimination, differentiation, I think that is ignored in this kind of approach. I think universalization is the only solution I can see, because if African countries can have, who are so poor, still they have universalization of food security, or Tamil Nadu, where the midday meal scheme allows elderly people and person with disability and children and lactating and pregnant mothers. If one state can afford it, why can't we, why can't we create pressure in the other states also to have this kind of a comprehensive right to food schemes and programs, more decentralized also. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And in the Western world, they are now talking about basic income, and giving a kind of limited amount to every person, whether away from the scheme of the family. So
yeah, Canada and Scandinavia.
Yeah.
Very, very important session today's, yeah, because generally it is missed out when we are having a discussion on gender issues. Because why we see violence only in terms of emotional, psychological, sexual, but violence, systemic and structural violence, by not allowing people to have food, no right to food, that itself is very, very important to understand. Because that's why even when we started this one-stop crisis center, the objections they would have is about the bill on one plate of dosa biscuit for the child. And they say, but this is not gender-based violence. How can you? But that woman who approached the hospital, she had a torn clothes. She had not eaten for so many days. Her child was crying for milk and this thing, and we used. So initial times we used to have so many fights with the accounts department, no, of the hospital. They said, how can you use the funds on gender-based violence for food? But food, and then we said that social workers should have a certain flexibility and use her discretion for food or clothing, because if your clothes are torn, you need to give her a new pair of clothes and all. So then that flexibility later on, it came as a petty cash issue. No? But people have such a the single track way of thinking, no, when it comes to bureaucratic interpretation.
Just got reminded of one thing that, there was a discussion about, that distributing, instead of giving hot, nutritious food to children in the schools, under the midday meal scheme, there was some of the corporate, they were pressurizing the government to have, biscuits and other things. And then I remembered that activists and, a lot of NGOs, they came together and they say, no, you can't do that, because food is not, biscuit is not, giving that nutrition which the child requires for the whole day.
Yeah.
So,
the best thing is the same amount being used in a different way. It's a question of management. If you have a decentralized cooking where people get food of their choice, their taste, and there is a supervision by the community also at the community kitchen. No, so I think that model works the best. And we saw during pandemic also, where the reverse migration was taking place, the migrant workers, they were themselves, they started fighting for, they said, we won't eat khichdi, we want chapati. I said, okay, then they will have to also contribute in bailoing chapati, and that worked really well. They got food of their choice and they were satisfied with the taste of food. It was hot and fresh, same amount which otherwise you would use it for ready to eat food, no, or a dry snacks and all. The same amount can be used for this thing, no. So it's a question of how your attitude rather than question of resources. Resources are there.
Actually, what I feel is that there is the problem lies in understanding, our own local communities. So what we base, I mean, the policies are based on something which is very easy. Okay, this set of people, this income, people in stable jobs and things, right? So we are mostly catering to lower class or lower middle class, and then we frame our policies. So we've been involved, in a personal capacity through a family trust with one particular school where we've been providing them fruits every week. So so this is just one little school, 240 children, and once in a week we provide them fruits. So those teachers are very smart. What they do is they have not declared the day. So they tell them it will be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. So children come, so this has helped them improve the attendance of the school. So the students try not to miss school on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And sometimes intentionally they give only on Thursday so that, they can come on Tuesday and Wednesday, because if they get something on Tuesday, they won't come on Wednesday and Thursday. So students are equally smart. But so of lately we asked them that if we could give them kits, food kits to carry home. Now, the problem with the food kits is that, something that suits the budget of the trust doesn't give them any dal. It gives atta, it gives chawal, it gives tel, right? But there is no dal, right? And vegetables, of course, we are not, giving. So these are dry kits, masala and things and all. So when I was talking to this teacher, she said, don't do this. They're going to take it home. Here they eat, right? You give them a fruit, nobody is going to buy them a fruit. So it's, they like eating these fruits and they eat it themselves. Once they carry things home, it's the siblings who will take it, or it's the parents, who will take it, and then they will only get a small little portion if they get it at all. So there are lots of issues concerning that. But what I feel is like, yes, the, universal, sharing of food is the most important. And that's the only solution, right? And one important thing is we understand our communities. Right. So I always have this Ela Bhatt's model in my mind, when she talked about women contributing economically and those women who were not being counted. I think that's the kind of grassroots work which we need to do, right? And again, we just talk about what we need to do, but I don't know who's going to do it. That's the biggest challenge which all of us have. And then we need to address these communities, with respect to their local needs, and then like ma'am said, some communities would eat chapatis, the others would eat rice, and
Even
that,
the medical condition, person is diabetic during
yes.
community kitchen during
Mm.
pandemic, we had to such a major categories. The TB patient needed high protein diet. Diabetes patient did not need rice. They wanted chapati. There were children who needed this. Some people were fasting. So the food for people who were fasting. In between, there were rosas also. There were various Hindu festivals also. So I think this kind of a specific needs of specific segment of population within the community also needs to be addressed. And for that, participation in decision making and bottom up approach is very important. So you provide all the resources, but they decide what is to be cooked and in which manner, on which day. So, right.
Yeah, no, right now I even heard about, there are certain NGOs who are talking about, giving eggs because eggs is considered to be more nutritious. But the state, some of the state governments, they are saying that no eggs should be given because of, various religious and cultural kind of considerations. So, these kind of, I think contestation is going on, and we have to be there at the ground level. Yeah, surely we can't do so many things. Like there's so many things to do, violence and this kind of discrimination, so many things to do. What karega kaun and kaise karega? Those questions are there, and we have to see that how we should go about doing that.
Yeah, and I
And
think
there's
many
also,
colleges have started, no, in the women's colleges, especially like wherever I am in the management, that after doing the medical examination, all those students who have less than 9 HB level, we have started providing them food, no, with and high protein diet. Or in an organization like Vacha, where we work with 20 busties, we raised special corpus grant for from the interest of which we are giving them supplementary food in the community, which is directly not taking it home, but directly given to the girls who eat when they come for the meeting or when they come to the office. So I think these are some of the best practices which we are seeing in a post-pandemic period, which is and still continuing because the nutrition level is it has gone down drastically in the post-pandemic period. And the food inflation is also so high, no? So many things cannot be people cannot afford to buy. So they just keep on focusing on carbohydrate. They don't get any other micronutrients and protein. Yeah. Iron also, because jaggery is very important.
Thank you, ma'am, for being with us here today and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in our future IMPRI events as well. Following two remarkable sessions by Advocate Audrey de Mello-ji and Advocate Shalu Nigam-ji, we are now heading to our final session of the day on Beyond Boundaries, a deep dive into tackling sexual harassment through posh policies for a secure work environment, led by Ms. Nandini Sarkar ji, Director of Business Operations, Sequel Management Services Private Limited. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good evening to Madam Patel and to the other distinguished speakers. I'm afraid I'm not able to switch on my video because I've logged in while on the road. I'm commuting. So I'm just going to present my screen and then share my ideas. So I'll take over the screen now. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, it is in working mode. If you can make it
Yeah.
slideshow mode is fine. Otherwise, yeah, okay, fine. Yeah.
So, ma'am, my presentation is going to be based on my actual experience of acting as external posh advisor to several corporates, both in the private sector, the PSU space, as well as startups. Now, before I, share with you what has changed, it was very interesting to hear all of you speak about what kind of ration should be provided. Then somebody rightly said, there are so many issues. There's an issue of violence, there's an issue of harassment, there's an issue of nutrition. So what do we do? Now, I find that very, interesting. I'm going to share my own experience that when after the Nirbhaya incident in 2014, the POSH Act was introduced. To our horror, we found that, no corporate is taking note. So 2015, 2016, things just went on. So our organization, our company Sequel, escalated the matter to the Prime Minister's office. And to our surprise, we received an invitation to meet the Joint Secretary Women in the PMO. So, we made a presentation to her and we told her that, look, you've gotten an act and it was long overdue, but nobody's implementing. And we said, we have a suggestion that why don't you link it to a company's annual accounts? Make it mandatory. So we recommended to the PMO that they make this a part of the Companies Act, requiring and mandating every company in India to report POSH compliance in its annual report. Again, to our pleasant surprise, she not only took note on her file of her observations and suggestions, but she also, sent us to meet the then Women Minister, Mrs. Maneka Gandhi. We made the same presentation, and lo and behold, in 2018, the government made this mandatory. That and it's going to be part of my presentation. So boond boond se sagar. That adage never ceases to surprise me. That the moment we step out and even a little effort on our part and pitching to the right people can have a domino effect that none of us can ever imagine. So, while that was a little deviation, I'd like to come back to these NCRB figures. So, the topic that, all of you have raised today, it remains very relevant. The figures, say it all, that from 56.5% in 2020, violence against women has risen to 64.5% in the 2021 report. And nearly 31,000 complaints were received by the NCW in 2022, apparently the highest since 2014. So this, along with, our corporate experience of a rising number of POSH cases, surely makes this a very topical event. So recently, I'm from Calcutta. I'm headquartered. We are headquartered in Calcutta, and all of you, this made national news. That what happened in Sandesh Khali was the state-sponsored sexual harassment. So the facts that emerged was that the local MLA was using his power to not only grab land, but was also, sexually assaulting women, and this had been carrying on for years. So women came out in droves and they gave a testimony saying that this had happened. But the state government, led by a woman chief minister, chose to turn a blind eye. Not only that, at the central level, to the, joint horror and dismay of all of us, this Olympian champion, the person who's made the country proud, Sakshi Malik, quit wrestling because the government failed to take any action against Brij Bhushan, the WFI chief who was accused of sexually harassing the lady wrestlers. So all of this, clearly points to the fact that sexual harassment remains, even in this century, a crime steeped in power. So, the last year when I had spoken about this, I'd shown visuals of Ravana. Like Ravana, at that time, could abduct Sita because he was flushed with power. And then I said, from Ravana and Sita Haran, so today to me too, Tanushri Datta, what has changed? Nothing really. That mindset change is still a long way to go. And, very sadly, whether it's the NCW or very other powerful women, especially in the government and PSU sector, my own experience is women on the internal complaints committee take the side of men. They don't take the side of truth. So that's another, alarming trend that we have been seeing. So, just to, because here we are also supposed to share insights on the law. I have, a recent Supreme Court judgments that I'd want to talk about that interest me as a posh external advisor. Just to briefly recap, before 1997 in this country, the law did not have a definition of sexual harassment. So the only thing that the law recognized was obscene representation of women. And if a woman was ever sexually harassed, she was left to the mercy of the local thana whether or not they would register a case at all. And it was largely rape And that also, she was left to the mercy of the local Thana. Now, we all know that in 2014, after the horrific Nirbhaya incident in Delhi, there were civil as well as criminal amendments to the law. So the civil procedure took the form of the POSH Act, which asked employers to prevent, prohibit, and redress sexual harassment at the workplace, whether the private sector, the public sector, government, educational institutions, anywhere where men and women work together. The person in charge was supposed to come forward and have a system of preventing, prohibiting, and redressing. Most interestingly, the criminal procedure of this country also underwent a massive change, and Section 354A was built into the IPC as part of the criminal procedure and recognized not only sexual harassment as a criminal offense, but also, served up fines and imprisonment. It also went on to add other notable sections such as 354 B, C, D, which spoke about criminal force on a woman, voyeurism, which is online stalking of a woman, and physically stalking a woman. So all these redressals were brought in. Also, when I started by saying that our company Sequel had made a representation to the PMO. So, we found to our pleasant surprise, two changes, further changes were enacted. One under the Companies Act and the other under the SEBI LODR, Listing Obligations Disclosure, where it is mandatory not only to report sexual harassment, but the constitution of the committee, the policies, how cases are being disposed. Recently, two governments, the government of Haryana and the government of Telangana, have said that, along with the annual POSH report, details of, how the POSH policy has been upgraded, details of how trainings have been conducted, details of, what action has been taken against those proven guilty. Those are the details which have to be uploaded in the government portal. So these are again changes. So clearly, the order of the day is that if we know how to make our representation to the powers that be, they are also willing to listen. So, so if everything is looking good and bright, what is not working is the slow disposal of cases. So today when we are saying that we have to stop, so if I take a limited view, because, my work is largely with corporates on preventing sexual harassment. So what is not working well there is the slow disposal of cases. Now, it's very interesting if you see the reasons why companies are taking their time. First, let me show you this report card. So this report card has the Nifty Top 50. It has the BSC 100 ESG. As we know, the latest, I don't like to call it jargon, but it is a bit of a jargon in the sense that, ESG in India today is yet to take off seriously. So sustainability seems to be something we find only on cosmetic brands that we buy, and maybe some clothing brands, but in corporate, I personally have seen very little of it. But anyways, there's a BSC 100 ESG, there's a Nifty 50, and there's a BSC 100. So if you see, the number of POSH complaints that are yet to be disposed are increasingly growing. So the reasons for this, again, some of the statistics that, the figures, the backlog has jumped. The BSC ESG backlog has jumped to 101%. The BSC 100 index, the pending cases have jumped by 65%. Now, one of the fallouts, one of the very pitiable fallouts of this delayed justice is young women, taking their lives, committing suicide. So this case of this, young Bhel accounts manager, just imagine a PSU manager. She was working in a department of 7. And apparently, they all ganged up against her, even though she had raised her complaint in writing. And finally, she ends up taking her own life. So this is one of the very painful fallouts of delayed justice. Now, the reasons are very interesting. The reasons are that many of those accused are the powerful men. So organizations, see them as game changers, for the revenue, for the bottom line. So they are reluctant to take action. Even today, we find in many corporates that, what happens to business is the first priority, not justice. Second, companies which are listed on major stock exchanges are also, primarily focused on what the investors are going to think. And this could be negative publicity. So they are a little hesitant to take immediate action. So that's another reason why they tend to take their own sweet time, especially because, especially when names are listed out. Like just last week, I was called to inquire into an event which involved a very, very senior IT manager whom the company had sent to Ireland for a major project. So just imagine, do you think this company would be in a hurry to take action when they've spent so much on his work visa and, they've sent him abroad? They are delivering, an IT solution for a major wholesaler in Ireland. So naturally, they are going to drag their feet. Also, in this country, a lot of companies, including MNCs, somehow believe that they don't have a budget for IC members training. So the reason why internal complaints committee are dragging their or taking their own sweet time to dispose cases is they have no idea what to do with it. And IC training today, is a very major gray area why cases are not being disposed in a speedier manner. So companies have to have budgets. Also, typically the ICs, the internal complaints committee, tend to be populated by senior people who are busy with business targets. They don't have time for such meetings. So, this was, an overview of, yes, today we have a criminal procedure. Yes, today we have a civil procedure. Yes, today, the SEBI as well as the Companies Act have built in certain checks and balances, and these are all very positive. But if we look at the pending cases, if we look at, the lack of budgets for training people to dispose these cases, if we look at, the sensitivity to bad publicity, if we look at, the intent to save powerful people, those remain concerns that need to be addressed next. I'm happy to say that the courts, at least in this country, are taking these matters very seriously. And, there are two judgments I thought I'd discuss today. One is the Fernandez versus State of Goa, and the other is the Sita Industries. So let's look at, what the court said. So they said that, you have to take so they said that, the ex parte order which was issued by the IC against the accused was rejected on the grounds that the IC did not give the accused reasonable time to effectively participate. The SC also took stock of the implementation of the POSH Act in the past decade and notably observed that an improperly constituted IC and equally an ill-prepared IC would be an impediment in conducting a fair inquiry, even after such a long passage that the POSH Act has been passed. Then also, what was important in this Fernandez judgment is the Supreme Court has once again tasked the secretaries of the Government of India, the chief secretaries of every state, to relook into the implementation of the POSH Act. And as a result, as I mentioned at the beginning, the government of Haryana, the government of Kerala, the government of Telangana has launched new updated POSH reporting portals in which details of, POSH policy upgrades, trainings, action taken against delinquents, all of this has to be reported. There's another, important Odisha High Court order which says that, today the display on the POSH Act is not at all conspicuous. So people have heard of Me Too. People have heard that the company has a POSH policy, but nobody knows whom to approach. And, whenever I sit in on inquiries, inevitably the lady, whether she's a housekeeping lady or whether she's an IT engineer, highly educated, will say, I waited beyond 3 months or 90 days because I was afraid of the annual appraisals. I was afraid that my harasser was an important man. I didn't want my appraisals to be affected. So, and I didn't know whom to approach. So, so this Odisha High Court order assumes a lot of importance. And this is, the detailed Haryana High Court order, which talks about what should the POSH policy, what information should it have, what notices must be displayed, what are the employee awareness and assistance programs that you must have, and most importantly, what are the IC committee recommendations. These also have to be uploaded along with training details of IC members on the government portal. So, before ending, I'd like to say that more and more, apart from, improving the speed of disposal of these cases, suo motu recognition is becoming very important because over the last 2 years, maximum number of cases, an educated lady has also delayed in reporting what she believes to be a harassment because of the fear of backlash. So, and many times, when the cases finally come to us, we have been told that the lady, even though she's educated, does not want to file a written complaint. So, can we just drop the complaint? So, these kind of suggestions I have repeatedly heard over the last 3 years, that can we drop a complaint because can we drop this incident because the lady refuses to give it in writing. So I'd like to end by saying that, underlying the spirit of the posh law, underlying the spirit of the criminal procedure law is suo motu recognition. That the moment you hear that something is not right, even if the lady, for appraisal, for security, for backlash, whatever may be the reason, is unwilling to give it in writing, the employer, the posh committee has to take cognizance, initiate an inquiry, and dispense justice. So, with this, I'd like to conclude our take on the gender violence related to posh as it stands today. So, over to you, Chairman Ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Your expertise and perspective have added tremendous value to our collective understanding of this crucial issue. I would now like to invite our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, for her remarks on this session.
Thank you, Ms. Nandini, Sundar, for making such a erudite and data-based presentation. Your first-hand experience, which you have shared about the corporate houses and also the public sector enterprises, is very valuable. My question to you is that even media houses, we have seen so many young journalists have complained of sexual harassment when they did not get any, like so many media houses even don't have posh committee. They have not instituted any system. And even the courts, like session courts lawyers, young lawyers entering the profession, so much so that even the judges had complained of sexual harassment. One judge in UP, she committed suicide also. There are so many complaints written. So what can be the accountability of the media houses and the judiciary?
So, the name and shame campaign. So, if there's one case we'll all remember, the TVF founder, the viral fever became one of India's most popular YouTube channels, right? And the founder, he was a small town boy from Bihar who rose to make TVF India's biggest media platform. 9 interns, which had, that had worked under him, went and posted it online on Facebook. So, the name and shame, and I also want to share with you, like, we know, I mean, in corporates, when we talk about grievances, a lot of people say, the corporate didn't take me seriously until I took my complaint to Twitter. The moment I posted on Twitter, a representative from the corporate communications team reached out to me. So, I've also sat in on cases involving the Star channel, the Star media channel. The CEO was also in the dock because multiple interns complained against his sexual harassment behavior. Today, this accountability has to be set by posting online, using the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare Development's SheBox portal, writing to the writing to the PMO also, and then seeking a report on what action has been taken. Interestingly, many police stations are also not only taking cognizance but registering the complaint when the employer is going with the accused or registering the complaint on her behalf. So, these multiple avenues of proactively raising this issue till somebody comes up with an answer that needs to be the order of the day. Also, seeking more accountability from the National Women's Commission itself. That, how many cases have you received as a commission? What action have you taken? So, Madam Patel, in 2015 or 2016, the Women Ministry came out with a handbook of cases. And they had been supported by the V.V. Giri Labour Institute on compiling this manual. Similarly, the National Commission for Women also needs to publish every quarter what kind of cases they are receiving and what action they're taking. Because unfortunately, they are not playing their role of a watchdog to the extent that they are empowered to. So whether it is a social media campaign, whether it is going to the local police station seeking justice, in many states like Hyderabad, Haryana, in many states like Telangana, Haryana, and Kerala, reporting to the local labor complaints committee, not the internal complaints committee, but the labor committee run by the labor office is also yielding good results. And finally, posting on the women ministries she portal, or seeking more feedback from the NCW. These could be some of the measures to create more pressure. And also finally, like just as the government has now mandated that every company should have a CSR budget, corporate social responsibility budget, similarly, they should be asked to disclose what kind of budgets they're allocating to posh training, especially for their IC members. So I think all of this, could take this implementation to the next level.
The attitude of the company to allocate a special room for counseling or setting up an inquiry, or the basically if there are members like 7-8 members in the posh committee, the cases go on for a long time, the whole inquiry goes on for a long time, their TA or their sitting fee is, most of them sitting fee is not included in most of the cases, but at least the hospitality and all, it's seen as a burden. Because even when I was in a member secretary of WDC of Bombay University, in the finance committee would humiliate me so much. They said all other departments bring income, you are the only department which ends. And it was nothing paltry, some 80 rupees a TA we used to give, and the hospitality, most of it we used to carry food from home, so that if the inquiry went on, those cases used to be extremely complicated. Sometimes inquiry would last for emotionally charged atmosphere. Outside there are demonstration, inside the inquiry is going on, and the whole process itself is so laborious and time consuming. So this is way. So I think the changing the attitude and the mindset of the employers, that these are the basic minimum that you need to provide for efficient functioning of WDC as well as ICC. No,
Yes,
so that
and
is very
and a
important.
white
It has to
paper
be part of the system. It should be
Yes,
part
and
of the.
I think a recommendation to the Minister for Women Development, like, when we made the representation in 2015, they issued circulars, like just as the Supreme Court has ordered all the chief secretaries of all the states to give a report to the court on what is the next level of implementation. Similarly, this whole thing about what is the TA, DA, what is the sitting fees, the ministry should be asked to look into it. A lawyer representing a politician in a court is paid 35 lakhs per hearing. Whereas, a lady sitting in on a violence or sexual assault case is being given a DA of 80 rupees a day. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So the government should be asked to rationalize
And
this.
that is only TA, not DA. It is TA.
Yeah, TA,
So
TA,
that you
travel
can go by
elements,
BST bus
which
and
is
the local
ridiculous.
train.
No, which is ridiculous. So it is, demeaning and making a mockery of this entire system.
Correct. So only those with the commitment to women's cause would come. So mostly it is the women's movement activists, no, who would sit on this committee. Others would just decline because, yeah.
And the NCW, I would say, also has the ear of the government. So they should be more vocal. They should participate in these kind of seminars because they should know that things are not working, and they must be accountable in the first instance.
Correct.
They've been set up to protect the rights of women, but they seem to be absent whenever women need them. So let them be counted. They also have budgets. What are they doing with those budgets? So there should be an RTI asking them.
Correct.
And there should be another RTI asking them, how are you disposing of complaints that are coming to you? Let us know.
And like for the general grievances, they hire a university lawyer who would charge, say, 10,000 per appearance. Can you imagine? For general grievances about employees' grievances or interpersonal fight, or some people not getting increment or promotion, they would hire a lawyer and spend thousands of rupees. But when it comes to posh committee, they won't give even a basic bare minimum for the conduct of the committee. No? So that this is the kind of prejudice you see.
Right,
I think there's some standardization, which is a very good idea, that if the ministry can send this GR, to all the and employers, organizations, that they
Yes.
need to have a budget.
And since SEBI is currently being headed by a lady and she's very dynamic,
Yeah,
she has changed the way SEBI operates, the entire compliance.
yeah,
So she can, IMPRI led by you, madam, could also send her a note saying that, SEBI has already taken a landmark step of making this a mandatory disclosure as part of the LODR rules.
yeah,
Similarly, why don't you take this a notch higher? Just as recently the state governments are asking for more details on budgets, training, corrective action, SEBI should also ask for these reports. Then these
correct.
people and the MCA ministry should also be approached, just as companies are mandated to give 2% to the CSR. How much are they committing to, the sexual harassment training
Correct.
and to the trainers
Yeah,
and to those who sit in on cases?
correct.
So that's a whole new angle that, a properly vocal team could carry to these different sources, whether it is to the SEBI chairperson, whether it is to the women minister, who is also a lady, and then again, knock on the doors of the PMO, as we did in 2015.
Yeah.
So clearly, those steps could be taken.
Multi-pronged. And also the pressure, building pressure is very important, because all the cases that we have seen where there a successful inquiry has taken place is because of the support and solidarity with the complainant
Public
received
pressure.
from the, very important. Even in case of
Absolutely.
Me Too movement, wherever there was a
Absolutely.
class suit, like Kerala example, the women actresses and filmmakers have formed association. After that, the boycott and retaliation,
Correct.
that is, they have been able to counter by taking help of the state, no? Yeah.
Correct.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very, very, very useful session.
Thank you, ma'am. The floor is now open for questions from the audience. You can raise your hand on Zoom or type in your question in the Q&A box.
Can I speak, Seema Malhotra?
Yes, please go.
Yeah. So, somehow I got engaged with the POSH Act, which was not called POSH since 2008. Nobody trained me just because I was a woman director of an NGO. I think that's how I kept learning and doing things. So one of the police training I was doing, I just want to share a few things and then my question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
No, not at all.
So, this, used to happen on Saturdays, 3 to 5. It was such a tough time to come out of the house and all that. And one day, one, senior police officer, can't take his name, he picked up a phone. I told him, sir, don't take the phone. But he said, okay, yeah, I won't take it. And he says, Punjabi mein, thodi maadi jai training ho rahi hai. Maadi jai means a small little training. That is the attitude of that person कि छोटी सी कोई training हो रही है मैं अभी आपको वापस phone करता हूँ. And I felt, yeah, come on, I'm giving my heart and soul to you people on a Saturday. And you are calling it a Maadi Jai training. That was 2008. Now, lately, I've been on panels of a 5-star hotel, medical center, colleges, ministries, and I get trained myself and all the companies which I'm working with, not too many, but they also train me. And I keep buying the book from the Jain Book Depot, the new POSH Act. Now, lately, I've been seeing like 1 year, I'm not getting any cases. So I thought, wow, great, it's awareness. So people are behaving themselves, men. But now I feel they have been told, the women have been told, do not complain. Am I right?
So, if the question is addressed to me, now
Yeah.
our clientele is largely MNCs, multinational companies, very large Indian companies, 1,000 crore plus, and PSUs, Mahanavrat and PSUs. So
Okay.
there, I have not heard that they were asked to suppress, but yes, there are a couple of small public sector undertakings where we were repeatedly invited, where I saw that, the presiding officer herself is laughing off cases, but those were rare. So, in the, I would say in the premium bracket clientele that we handle, we have not seen any attempt to suppress or, any such messaging. Rather, in ITS companies, it is women and especially down south. Surprisingly, where women are most literate and most educated, down south, maximum cases when I've asked, educated women why they have taken so much time to raise the complaint. The answer was always, I was afraid about my appraisal going wrong. My mother was never allowed to work because we are a conservative family. Today, I'm afraid that, this freedom might be taken away from me
Yeah.
if I report such a case, which is why they don't even give written complaints. So, yes, but there could be other such companies which are not premium, where, like you said, the police officer made very light of such a major thing. So there may be, many organizations which are reluctant and they see this as a waste of time. And, if we look at the figures, the poor disposal of cases, we have the evidence, we have the data to say that India's top 100 ESG companies, Nifty top 50, BSC top 100, they are also dragging their feet. So it's not that, they are explicitly telling women not to complain, but by delaying cases, what is the message that they're giving? So you are absolutely right that this still does not get the seriousness that it deserves.
Yeah, but I work with ministries also, so I can't give you the names. And one of the fashion designer, major brand, and we were training them I was part of a group, and everything was hunky, very nice, nothing, 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 nothing. And during lunchtime, 5 girls come to me, but ma'am, we have been told not to speak out. If we have anything, we should ignore it, and that's it.
Correct.
It's so sad that I thought ki such a known company, which a multinational, they would do something about it. But they said ki no, cases hi nahi hai hamare paas. And then ministries, we never get the report. And every time it is, something about promotion and all, they say, no, ma'am, wo to aise hi tha. Some ST case was there, some other known people were there. I said, then what is the point? We have spent 2 months, 90 days, we have given you report. Now, after 2 years, you're calling me back again for the same case. And this guy who has been shifted from one place to the other, and then he's saying, I'll take you to the court, and he's threatening me. I needed a security guard from the ministry. So, it's pretty, I don't know, somewhere I feel, okay, good, no case. But then I also feel, no, if I'm there to help one lady also, it should be reported. But the reports we don't get back, ki, hua kya us case ka? When we have given you the report, we have done our inquiry, then what happened about it? Nothing.
Yeah, actually, in a lot of cases, I've seen that those who were earlier hostile, they didn't want to act as witnesses or they didn't want to report. When we told them that, look, it's first of all, it's going to be very confidential, nobody will know. Secondly, you just come on one virtual call. You don't have to move out of your home also. Just join us for a call and tell us what happened, because it's not only about you, it's about other young women also. When we persuade them like this, many of them have come forward. At least, I mean, I'm not taking any pride in this, but I was pleasantly surprised with the success of this strategy. That the moment you persuade them by saying that you just have to come once, come on a virtual call, you don't have to come anywhere physically. It's confidential, no one will know, and do it for the sake of other young women. So, inevitably people have come forward and they have stated their testimonies. So, like
Yeah.
I said, no, rather than being bound down by procedure कि नहीं आपको तो लिख के ही देना है, आपको तो यहाँ आना है, आपका ये होगा वो होगा, that scares people. Because, at the end of the day, there are husbands at home, वो क्या सोचेंगे, in-laws क्या सोचेंगे, मेरे appraisal का क्या होगा, I'll be seen as a troublemaker. That is also, running right. That is for sure. But the
Yeah,
moment,
yeah.
you do a counter messaging and turn the tables on them, then, it becomes like silk. It becomes very smooth. So
Mhm.
that strategy, should also be actively
Yeah.
pursued.
And I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah.
question of confidential report, 6-monthly confidential report with the head gives. So we have seen that in case of such complaint, it is seen to it that the person, just the boss, the accused is not in the position to give this kind of confidential report. At least in the university it happens, because there were cases against vice principal who had misbehaved with the teachers, or cases of HOD who harassed the colleague, the department person, or a PhD scholar. We saw to it that he is not given the responsibility of writing confidential report, so that they can not ruin. I think if educational institutions can do it, corporates can also do this. No. The
So
moment
just
there is a complaint, that person is robbed of this kind of power to make or break her career.
Actually,
talking about confidentiality.
another thing I heard from a major hospital, they have branches all over India, is that this problem is rampant, doctors, nurses, but because the hospital is rendering an emergency service, they don't want to focus on it. So, this major hospital was in long-term talks with us because they were feeling very disturbed. The HR director was very disturbed because every day he was hearing incidents. But because of the nature of their work, they were, very reluctant ultimately. They had taken the step of also thinking that we'll set up an online portal where people can anonymously report their grievances. But the very nature of their services, people are having to have people around, the scarcity of nurses, scarcity of doctors, other issues made them put this on a back burner. But however, any major implementation is going to have its challenges. I think the POSH Act is here to stay. Me Too is here to stay. Nobody can wish it away. The only question is how can we get there sooner? And how can we as a nation not brazen it out? Like, that's why I put Sakshi Malik's picture back on the screen. Because, as a nation, we should be ashamed that, we brought out a midnight vigil. We stayed on vigil for Nirbhaya for 13 days. But for Sakshi, there was no one. For the other, women wrestlers, there was no one. So, there has to be more activism because as Madam Chairman rightly said, without the activism, without keeping it out in the public eye, we have to keep this issue alive. Also, on a last note, at least in corporates, over the last 3 years, there have been rising cases of false complaints. Just like, the Dowry Act started getting misused. So, in the course of our trainings that we give, that we render at corporates, we highlight this issue because at the end of the day, we have to have a balanced approach. But then, when something like Sakshi Malik or the Wrestling Federation or what happened in Sandesh Khali, these things are so brazen. The evidence is so great that we as a nation, cannot live with it. We cannot choose to live with it. So definitely more activism is needed.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for being with us here today and patiently answering all our questions. We look forward to seeing you in our future IMPRI events as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very, very mind-blowing session.
Thank you.
As we are through with all our sessions for the day, I request our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, to kindly share final remarks on today's deliberation.
Today's deliberations, I think one thing that came out clearly that it is like fighting the individual cases of gender-based violence, whether it is in the domestic arena, like fighting against domestic violence or POCSO cases, the first speaker, Advocate Audrey, told us, along with the networking with the other stakeholders and community support, I think is very important. Dr. Shalu Nigam's presentation on the rights of the disenfranchised people and why is the systemic and structural violence where people are deprived of nutritional security and food security is also very, very important concern. And that also widened our horizon of understanding of violence, which is not only just physical or sexual or emotional violence, but also the systems and structures that create this kind of inhuman situations. And the third presentation about implementation of prevention of sexual harassment at Workplace Act, which is considered to be the most hazardous occupation, the event in 21st century, where women are entering the public life at the workforce, and they are facing backlash of violence because of the hypermasculinity and also the misogyny that is there among the people with authority, and as so many ample examples were given. And we have seen that even when a complainant is supported by group of women, as we saw in a Priya Ramani case, where she accused the powerful man of sexual harassment and rape in the some 2-3 decades back, and when so many other journalists stood by her, she did not face the kind of the imprisonment and a very severe backlash that she could deter. But the whole agony of fighting the case was very much there. So I think enhancing prevention through public awareness and at the same time speedy justice, because as Nandini said, that when you don't get justice and if the case drags on, then people commit suicide. We have recently heard so many women who have given best years of their life, 20, 30 years of their life, to reach the higher position, whether in corporate or judiciary or military. Even in Navy, we had got such cases, and what they face is this kind of a very unhappy and painful ending. So improving the access to support service is important. At the same time, the solidarity and the support to the survivor is very important. During 80s, we did not have the POSH Act, but such cases, whether it was a sexual harassment of nurses in a 5-star hospital, where the Arab tourists used to harass nurses by lifting their skirt and misbehaving, or there were cases of temporary teachers who were being harassed by the principal on this thing. There was only show of strength. We used to just have a mobilization because we had only 356, the Outraging Modesty and Anti-Obscenity Act. That's it. And that also, the definition was so vague that police would not even take it up. They would also, if you went to the police station, they would laugh at you for taking such trivial matter, the quote-unquote trivial matter. So I think in those days, like the only thing which stood by us and we won those cases were because of the support that women's movement and the new autonomous women's organizations provided to the survivor of sexual harassment. And at that time, the song, which was very popular, it was in Marathi, but it was translated into English also by Dr. Joy Deshmukh. I would like to end with this hopeful note. We will not fear anyone. Shield of organization, sword of unity, will we take in our hands. We will not fear anyone. Now we will not fear anyone. Walls of customs they have built, let them build. Nets of slavery they have laid, let them lay. We will not be fooled by mass. Now we will not fear anyone. Calling us idols of love, sacrifice, they install us in temples. Let them install. Then make us servants they trample upon, and let them trample. To assert our humanity, we will go ourselves. We will not fear anyone. We will not fear anyone. With struggles and strife, will we relate ourselves? Oh, yes, we will. With the downtrodden, will we make friends? Oh, yes, we will. With the exploited, hand in hand, we will advance. We will not fear anyone. We will not fear anyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the beautiful summarization of today's takeaways. With your permission, ma'am, should we go ahead with the final vote of thanks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. As we come to the end of day 7 of Ending Gender-Based Violence, Cohort 2, Awareness of Policies and Governance, an online National Spring School program, a 4-week online immersive certificate training course, I, Yashika, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, Gender Impact Studies Center. We are grateful to our experts for day 7, Advocate Audrey ji, Miss Nandini Sarkar ji, and Advocate Dr. Shalu Nigam ji for taking out their valuable time and allowing the participants to learn from this online certificate program. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. Readings for the session have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. We look forward to welcome you for our 8th day of this certification course on 27th March at 6 p.m. The theme for day 8 is action planning and next steps. And the experts are Mr. Harish Sadani ji, Professor Vibhuti Patel ji, and Advocate Shalu Nigam ji. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in future for our IMPRI web policy talk and web policy learning. Wishing you a good evening. Thank you.